Welcome to episode 3 of Ambient Guitar Walkthrough. This is a series where I'm demonstrating how to create, record, and process ambient guitar pieces. If you haven't seen the first 2 episodes, I would recommend that you go check them out. Episode 1 is actually the final product of this walkthrough, the actual recorded piece along with a video. Episode 2 was where I broke down the effect chain and pedals that I used to achieve the sound. In this video, I'll be showing how I mixed it and how I created a video. So let's get to work. So I've got Logic pulled up with the audio, and I'd just like to walk through the effects. But before I do that, I'm going to play just a few seconds of the piece. Here we go. Okay, as you know, if you've watched the other episodes, there's already a lot of delay and reverb on the track. And it's a stereo track, so it really doesn't need that much in terms of a mix to kind of whip it into shape for a YouTube video or a recording, maybe, for an album. So I really just added a few effects, so I'd like to walk through them here. The first effect is Izotope's Neutron product. Okay, this is a really great product. By the way, Izotope is not paying me anything for saying anything about their products. I just really like them. So Neutron is a really great product that you can throw on any track and add equalizers, compressors, exciters, and transient shapers. So let's see what I did with Neutron. The first effect up is an equalizer. And what you'll see here is that I identified just a few frequency ranges that I wanted to adjust. So first frequency range is actually a high-pass filter, and this actually starts at about 63 hertz and is just rolling off a little bit of the low end, just a little bit to decrease the mud of the sound. Next up is a cut at 188 hertz. Now, the thing with Neutron is that you can do the standard EQ moves, but Neutron also has a dynamic mode in which it kind of acts like a compressor at a specific frequency range. So if there's not a lot of buildup at the frequency range, nothing happens. But if there is a momentary buildup, Neutron brings that frequency range down. So I'm going to play you a little bit. Let me just watch this EQ curve and you'll see what I mean. Okay, you can see the line moving up and down as this 188 hertz area increases in volume. It just kind of brings it down to keep it balanced out. And the other thing I'll note over here, where the kind of the gauge is, if you will, the meter, you'll see that I'm decreasing that area by between 5 and 10 dB. So check that out. Okay, that part a little less, but in some parts it's between 5 and 10 dB. Okay, next up is a cut, and this is not dynamic. This is just standard EQ cut at about 1651 hertz. And there was a little harshness there that I wanted to take out, so I just kind of cut it. And then finally, I wanted a little more brightness to the tone, so I used a combination of an increase at 2751 hertz along with a high shelf there that you see. So that just kind of brings up the high end and lets it ride on out above the mid-range. So let me play this for you just a moment more. Here we go. Now I'll take it out. So it's not a huge difference, but it's enough just to clean up some of the mud. All right, the other effect that I used in Neutron is a compressor. And what's really great about Neutron is there are two compressors. So compressor number one, let's check that out. It's actually a multi-band compressor, and you can see that I'm using two of the bands. Band number one is a 5-to-1 ratio, thresholds at 19.6. Band number two, which is the high end, is at 2-to-1 ratio, and it's really, the threshold's very low, or very high, very low. So it's going to catch some of the high end to kind of balance it out with the mid-range. So let me go ahead and play this here and just check the meters out, and you'll be able to see how much gain reduction is occurring in the different frequency bands. Okay, so you can see that they're operating somewhat independently, and they're working to, again, balance out the tonality of the piece. All right, so I do have one more compressor that is engaged in Neutron, and this is in vintage mode. So we actually have VU meters here instead of the more digital meter on compressor one. And this is only one band. And check this out, it's 1.5 to 1 compression ratio. It's set to negative 19.7 dB, and you're going to see a gentle compression that's just catching the peaks. So let's check that out. Okay, so that's pretty subtle overall. So that's a technique that I've read about and kind of learned from over the years from different people, is to use two different compressors. Set compressor one a little more aggressively to do most of the compression, and then set compressor two as a gentle compression that just catches the peaks, and it really does help to round out the tone, the sound of your piece. All right, so that's Neutron. There's only really one other effect I want to mention for this mix, and that is Izotope Ozone 7. And this is a mastering plugin that I use. I've used it on almost all of my albums. I love it. It's really great. And so let's just see what's going on here. First effect up in Izotope is an EQ. This is a mastering EQ, so we're going to use it again in a very gentle way. So you can see I've got a little cut here. It's a 1 dB cut at 443 hertz. So let's check that out. All right, that really is subtle. If you're not listening on really good speakers or headphones, you probably couldn't hear a difference. That little teeny cut is just, again, clarifying the mid-range just a little bit. Next up is the vintage compressor. And again, I'm using this just to catch some peaks and give it a fuller, kind of rounder tone. So let's check that out. Okay, as you can see, if you were looking at the meter at the bottom, it shows you kind of how much gain reduction is going on. Okay, and really, I'm not seeing much more than 1.3, 1.4, maybe 1.5 dB of gain reduction. Again, it's just catching the peaks and smoothing things out. All right, that's EQ, vintage compression. Next up is the vintage tape plugin. I got to tell you, I am totally addicted to this plugin. I really like it. It does really make a difference to the tone. So check this out real quick. There you can control drive. This bias slider emulates actually the tape bias. You can even model the tape speed, the high and low harmonics, and you can emphasize the lows or the highs. So I won't go into this in detail, but just check out the difference in tone. So I'm going to turn it off, and I'll start the play, and then I'll turn it on. Isn't that interesting? I feel like it's a significant difference. It's subtle, but it's there, and to me it's a feeling of weight in terms of the overall tone of the mix. So take it or leave it. I love it, so I'll keep it. Last in the signal is already active, and I just left it active to kind of make sure that my levels were smoothed out for this video. And that's just simply a limiter. I always set my limiter to a ceiling of -1 dB. I don't want the peaks to go above that, especially for video. And I just pulled the threshold down to -7. And what I'm shooting for, especially for YouTube, is an average level of about -13 dB. So that's an LUFS rating. It's kind of it's a loudness standard. So I've got that set to kind of achieve that. All right, so that's the mix. Not really that much because we have so much going on with the pedals. What I'd like to do now is switch over to Final Cut and show you quickly how I put the video together. Okay, I've got Final Cut Pro open, and what I'd like to do now is just walk through the tracks in the timeline here, and what's going on, and different effects that I've used to achieve the look of the video. So the first thing you'll note is that I've got the main performance track going on right here. I've got it highlighted in the middle, and I've added a few different effects. So over here in the inspector, you can see I've got them kind of listed out. The first effect up is called Romantic, and it's a Final Cut Pro out-of-the-box effect. It adds kind of a shimmer effect, in particular around the headstock of the guitar. So watch when I turn it off. See how the headstock kind of sharpens up? So kind of cool there. I also did a little bit of color correction to this video, so let's check that out. So as you can see here, I pulled out just a little bit of the blues in terms of the midtones. I pulled out a little bit of saturation in the mids, and then bumped up the global saturation a little bit just to bring extra color into the image of me. And I left the exposure as is. All right, so that's the color correction. If we turn it off, you can see the difference. You can see it was a lot bluer, and so I warmed it up with the color correction. The next effect that I used, again, it's a Final Cut Pro effect, is called Security. Let me turn it off. And so this is without security, and this is with. So you can see what's happening here is I'm adding in a faint horizontal line, and I'm adding in a little bit of a vignette. Okay, so I won't go through all these sliders, but if you happen to have Final Cut and you want to fool around with this, that's how you get that effect. Okay, so that's the main video of me playing. This particular tune is it's called The Silent Ground, and it's actually a portion of a line from a William Wordsworth poem. And it's a poem that he wrote after viewing or seeing the Battle of Waterloo. And so the silent ground refers to all the dead lying on the ground. So I thought, oh, I've got some video of a cemetery. So it might be cool if I added the cemetery in. So I took that clip and threw it on top of my myself playing. And it's not a green screen, right? So the clip of me playing is just a gray backdrop. But if you bring the opacity of that clip down, in this case to 23.79%, and set the blend mode to overlay, you get this nice mixture of images. And if you look closely, you can see, for example, I think in my hand, where the image is actually overlaying on top of the image of me. But it's pretty subtle, and when it's in motion, you don't necessarily notice it. You probably notice this vertical line here in the middle of my face. But that's from the opacity. And then what I did was added in a fade at the end of my performance. So I faded me out before the gravestone there. And then at the beginning, you'll just see the title kind of hanging out there. Whoop. And I'm going to come in there in just a minute. There we go. Okay, and that's really the basics of what I did with Final Cut Pro. Anyhow, that is a look then at the mix in Logic Pro of this ambient guitar meditation. And this episode is also a look at how I put the video together. I hope it's been helpful for you just to get a glimpse at some of my process for when I create these performance videos. If you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to my channel. I've got ambient guitar related content coming every single week. And if you're interested, you can check out Chords of Orion Music. And as always, I will see all of you on the next video.